Good morning, student. Welcome to the lecture series of ETI. In the last lecture, we had a discussion on what is digital evidence, what are the different sources of digital evidence, and difference between primary evidence and secondary evidence. Now, in today's lecture, we will discuss about the rules of digital evidence. As there are 6 rules related to digital forensic investigation, likewise, we have 2 rules in the digital evidence. So, there are 2 main rules. First one is the admissibility and second one is the reliability and authenticity. So there are 2 main rules which govern the admissibility of digital evidence in court. For every evidence to be admissible in the court, it must be original and authenticate. That means we have to ensure the integrity of digital evidences before admitting it to the court. So the rules relating with the admissibility of digital evidence are: first one is the legality of acquisition and second one is the digital evidence handling. So the first rule of admissibility is the legality of acquisition of the evidence. So it involves establishing whether the evidence was obtained with the appropriate authorization. It means that in this phase or in these rules, first we are going to authorize the digital evidence. We are going to check whether our digital evidence is authorized or not. Okay, it means that this step involves establishing whether the evidence was obtained with the appropriate authorization or not. So the authorization tool includes, now how we can check the digital evidence is appropriate, authorized or not. So there are again some tools which we are going to use, like search warrant, then consent and exigency. So the first one is the search warrant. Now everyone is very well aware with the search warrant. Now the search warrant gives legal permission for investigators to search a vicinity, property or personal effect. So to acquire the digital evidence or for the acquisition of digital evidence, we always search computer system, network systems and servers. Okay, as in the last lecture we have discussed the sources of digital evidence. So there are 3 sources. First one is internet, in which we are going to search for the internet service provider. Second one is your computer device. From computer device we can easily acquire digital evidences. And third one is your mobile device is another source for acquiring the digital evidence. So here search warrant, here we require search warrant for the permission to investigate property or personal effects. It means that search warrants requires for the permission to search computer system, network system, mobile devices and internet in terms of digital forensic. Then next one is the consent. Now consent means permission by the person, that is consent. So consent is given willingly by the person or party concerned. Now willingly by the person or party concerned means the persons whose computer or mobile devices are going to be searched or going to be seized. So consent is given willingly by the person or party concerned to the investigators to access an area, property or personal effects to help with their investigation. It means that consent is given by the person or property concerned. To whom it is given? To the investigator to access the computer device, to access mobile device and to access the network, that is internet, to help with their investigations. And the last tool for the legality of acquisition is exigency. Now, exigency entails that situation presents a level of urgency requiring investigators to carry out a search. Now, in the period of urgency, investigator carried out a search. For example, police may obtain a warrant to search an office while investigating some sort of fraud. For example, Jim is a member of staff, knowing his innocence in the matter, willingly gives consent to the investigator to further search his home computers. So the Jim, who is a staff member, who knows that he is innocent in the matter, and that's why he willingly gives consent to the investigator to search his home computers. And during this search, the child pornography was discovered on Jim's laptop, and with the increase in the number of cases, the situation proved exigent enough for investigating Jim more thoroughly. That is the exigency. That means that situation presents a level of urgency requiring investigators to carry out a search. Then next one is digital evidence handling. In this rule, or we can say that the second rule, that is digital evidence handling, that governs digital evidence admissibility, is the handling method of digital evidences. So digital evidences can be volatile, and any mistake in handling the information or devices can give the defendant's ground to nullify it. Now we know that the digital evidence are volatile and they are very delicate to handle. It means that with improper handling, digital evidences can be destroyed completely. So it is very important thing that we should handle digital evidences with care, because they are volatile in nature. And because they are volatile in nature, and it is very critical to achieve the integrity of digital evidences, the information or devices can give the defendant's ground to nullify it. It means that if we have digital evidences, sufficient digital evidences to prove someone guilty, but if these digital evidences are destroyed by improper handling, that time the criminal or the wrongdoing person uh, will be nullified on the grounds that there is no digital evidences against him. So a proper system of chain of custody and processes must be observed and maintained. So the forensic experts have specialized tools and methods that they use when copying contents of hard drive, for example, in which an exact image of drive is obtained, preventing any form of changes to the data. So for acquiring the data, for acquisition of digital evidences, the forensic expert always use some specialized tools, methods and technologies while copying contents. While copying contents, because by the rules of digital forensic investigation, we can't perform examination or investigation on the original data. That's why we have to make copy of that data. So while copying that data, we have to use some specialized tools, methods, and technologies. So an inexperienced IT person may use conventional methods of copying data that will change the data in some way. It means that like an experienced IT person like us, if we use conventional methods for copying data, it means that there is a chances that your data will be changed in some ways. And the second rule of digital evidence is that authenticity and reliability. So authenticity and reliability of digital evidence is the process of ensuring that the digital evidence is genuine, has not been tampered with, and is not some form of forgery. It means that your digital evidence must be original, it must be integrity must be ensured, and it must be authenticate and reliable. That means it is not having some form of forgery. So the authentication and reliability ensure the some terms like the data or information presented as evidence has been unchanged. Your data must be unchanged. Then second, the data or information presented actually originates from the device purported to be the source. It means that the data or information that we acquired as a digital evidence must be originate from the device that purported to be the source. For example, our target source is mobile device. That means that the information or data must be originated from the mobile device only. And next one is the timestamps associated with the said data are correct. It means that your log files, your server files, network files must be correct. So ensuring authenticity of evidence may involve the investigators at the top of the chain of custody certifying in court that the evidence collected initially is the same as that presented in the court. In addition, forensic experts may provide further technical evidence proving that the evidence originated from the perforated source. The second aspect rule out hardware and software issue with the said device. And here it is important to establish that digital evidence was in proper working order at the time of evidence collection or extraction. So these are the two rules. First one is admissibility, in which there are two sub rules. First one is legality of acquisition, and for legality of acquisition we have three rules, three tools like search warrant, consent, exigency. And the second sub rule of admissibility is digital evidence handling. And the second rule of digital evidence is authenticity and reliability. Next topic is characteristics of digital evidence. Now there are two characteristics of digital evidence in your syllabus. First one is Locard's exchange principle and second is bit stream image. So Locard exchange principle. Dr. Edmond Locard was the director of the world's first forensic laboratory in France. So he presented Locard's exchange principle, and it is also known as Locard's principle of transference in the early 20th century for the purpose of collecting the trace evidences. So the Locard's principle of transference, or we can say that Locard's exchange principle is based on the purpose of collecting trace evidence. So Locard firmly believed that no matter what a criminal does or where a criminal goes, he or she will certainly leave trace evidence at the criminal scene. Okay, so Locard believed that no matter what criminal does, what type of criminal activity he does, or where criminal goes in around the world, he or she will certainly leave the trace evidence at the crime scene. And this principle is completely based on tracing that evidences. So in fact, whenever two or more people come into contact with one another, a physical transfer takes place. For example, skin, hair, pollen, clothing fiber, glass fragments, makeup, debris from clothing, or any other material can be transferred from one person to another person. And this material helps the forensic examiners to collect the trace evidences. For example, by using hairs, pollen, clothing fiber, makeup, we can done DNA DNA activity on this material. So it is very easy for the forensic examiner to collect the traces of evidences from all these things. So the Locard's exchange principle is based on the uh, is based is completely based on the tracing digital evidences. So the applicability of Locard's principle of transference in computer forensic applies to cyber crimes involving computer networks such as identity theft and electronic bank frauds. So where we use Locard's principle of transference, or what are the applications of Locard principle of transference in computer forensic? So it is applied to cyber crimes, which generally involves computer networks. For example, identity theft and electronic bank fraud. Or the best example of a computer network threat is ransomware. So to understand how Locard's exchange principle applies to computer forensic, consider what happens when computer is connected to a particular network. To establish an internet connector, computer must have a network interface card. Okay, now we know that there is a network interface card, there is a MAC address, there is a IP address. So whenever a computer is connected to a particular network, to establish that internet connection, computer must have a network interface card. And once the connection is successfully established with the network interface card transmit its MAC address. Okay, so MAC address is your hardware address also, which address to a relevant DHPC server. So after that, the DHPC server log records this MAC address and assign an IP address to the computer. So the once DHPC server log record this MAC address, the server assign an IP address to your computer. Okay. So which could receive and store this IP address. Now it means that your computer establishes connection with the network or with the internet. So noticeably, the interaction between computer and DHPC server causes the exchange of information such as MAC address and IP address, or we can say that physical address and logical address, because MAC address is also known as physical address and IP address is also called as logical address. Okay, so interaction between the computer and DHPC server causes the exchange of information such as MAC address and IP address between the both devices. So this interaction can help the forensic experts to determine the specified date and time of the day when this interaction took place. Okay, or by using this interaction, forensic experts can determine specified date and time of the day when this interaction takes place by using your log files and timestamp also, because your timestamp show the time and date of the particular event. Okay, so this is about the Locard's exchange principle, that means tracing digital evidences. Now the second characteristics of digital evidence is a bit stream image. So bit stream image is a sector by sector or bit by bit copy of hard drive. Okay, as we know that in digital forensic investigation, we don't perform examination or investigation on an original evidence. Okay, and so for that we have to make a bit by bit copy of that original evidence. Okay, so bit stream image is a sector by sector or bit by bit copy of hard drive. A bit stream image is actually a set of files that can be used to create an exact copy of hard drive. Now, what is bit stream image? Bit by bit copy of hard drive. It is actually a set of files that can be used to create an exact copy of hard drive, preserving all latent data in addition to the files and directory structure. So a bit stream image can be read by the majority of the tools which are used by the computer forensic examiner to analyze the hard drive, such as EnCase, FTK, ProDiscover, and many others. And we have discussed about these tools in the third unit, that is in the digital forensic investigation. So bitstream image can be read by the majority of the tools used by the computer forensic examiner to analyze the hard drive, such as EnCase, FTK, ProDiscover, and many others. By utilizing the bitstream image, the computer forensic examiner takes no risk of contaminating the original evidence. So the computer forensic examiners create the bitstream image by attaching the original computer media to a write protection device that ensures no writes can take place to the original media while the bitstream image is created. Okay, so the bitstream image of disk drive is a clone copy of it. It copies virtually everything included in the drive, including sectors and clusters, which makes it possible to retrieve files that were deleted from the drive. So the bitstream images are actually used when conducting digital forensic investigation in a bid to avoid tampering with the digital evidences so that it is not lost or corrupted. So basically the bit stream image is used while conducting digital forensic investigation. And what is the purpose of using bit stream image? So that digital evidence is not lost or corrupted. So to maintain the integrity of digital evidence, to maintain the authenticity of digital evidence, digital forensic examiners are going to use bit stream image of DIX. Okay, so these are the characteristics of digital evidence. The first one is Locard's exchange principle, which based on the principle of tracing the digital evidences, and second one is bit stream image, which is used to ensure the integrity of your digital evidence. Now the next topic is types of digital evidences. So there are a number of types of digital evidences, but as per your syllabus, we are going to discuss the 11 types of digital evidences. So the first one is electronic digital evidence. So now we all know about the electronic digital evidence book because we are discussing about it from the third unit. So the type of evidence that we are dealing with has been variously described as electronic evidence, which is also known as digital evidence, or it is also known as computer evidence. So the word digital is commonly used in computing and electronics, especially where physical word information is converted to binary numeric form, as in digital audio and digital photography. Okay, as in the last lecture we discussed about what is digital. So digital is nothing but the combination of your 0 and 1. That means it is a binary. So the definition of digital evidence includes information of probative value stored or transmitted in a binary form, and information stored or transmitted in binary form that may be relied on in court. So while the term digital is too wide, as we have seen, the use of binary is too restrictive because it only describes one form of data. The electronic evidence data comprising the output of analog device or data in digital format that is manipulated, stored or communicated by any man-made device, computer or computer system, or transmitted over a communication system that has a potential to make the factual account of either party more probable or less probable than it will be without the evidence. So the definition that I told you has three elements. First, it is intended to include all forms of evidence that is created, manipulated or stored in a product that can in its widest meaning be considered as a computer, excluding for the time being the human brain. The second element, it aims to include the various forms of devices by which data can be stored or transmitted, including analog device that produce an output. And ideally, this definition will include any form of device, whether it is a computer as we presently understand the meaning of computer, telephone system, wireless telecommunication system, and networks such as internet, and computer system that are embedded into a device such as mobile telephones, smart cards, and navigation system. And the third element restricts the data to information that is relevant to the process by which dispute, whatever the nature of the disagreement, is decided by an adjudicator, whatever the form and level the adjudication takes. So this part of definition includes one aspect of admissibility and relevance only, but does not use admissibility in itself as a defining criteria, because some evidence will be admissible but excluded by the adjudicator within the remit of their authority, or inadmissible for reasons that have nothing to do with the nature of the evidence. And for instance, because of the way it was collected, the last criteria, however, restricts the definition of electronic evidence to those items offered by the parties as a part of the fact-finding process. So this is all about the electronic evidences. as per your syllabus. And the second evidence that we have is a documentary evidence. So as name suggests, documentary evidence, it means that it contains documents. So any matter which is expressed or described on any substance by means of letters, figures, or remarks, or by more than one means, and which can be used for recording the matter, is considered as a document. So this is a definition of document. So generally the most common document which we have to deal with is described by letters. So the documents are written in any language of communication such as Hindi, English, Urdu, etc. So documents produced before the court as evidence are the documentary evidence, and there must primary or secondary evidence to prove the contents of the document. As your document is original document, then it is primary evidence, and if it is a certified document or if it is a xerox copy of that document, then it is secondary evidence. Okay, so the next type of digital evidence is secondary evidence. So secondary evidence is the certified copy of the evidence, or it is a copy of original document. So secondary evidence also includes oral accounts given by a person about the contents of the document who has himself seen it. Okay, so so the statement given by witness are also considered as a secondary evidence. Okay, and in the last lecture, we have discussed the difference between secondary evidence and primary evidence in detail. And remaining types of evidences we will discuss in the next lecture.